I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minister Scott, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilman Costin?
Present.
Councilman Shoemaker?
Present.
Councilor McDaniel?
Here.
Councilman Delavar?
Present.
Councilman Greenlee? Councilman Morris?
Here.
And Councilman Russell.
We did have communication from Councilman Greenlee that he would be absent this evening, and we also received a note today from Councilman Russell that said that he would be late to the meeting.
Make a motion to excuse Councilman Greenlee from the meeting.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to excuse Councilman Greenlee. Any council discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence. And just a note, Mayor, that we did receive a email from Councilman Russell indicating he would be late for this meeting today.
Yep. Thank you. We're now at that point for any members of the public that wish to address council this evening. If you would come forward to the microphone, give us your name and address for the record, and any comments, if you could, keep them to 3 minutes and under. Okay, that's an easy public comment this evening. Wow. Consent agenda. We have a consent agenda this evening consisting of 5 items. Our council minutes of August 15th, 2011. Our workshop minutes of August 22nd, 2011. The regular accounts payable claims in the amount of $1,014,797.11. Agenda Bill 10711, an award of bid to Haskin Electric for the Washougal Lighting Procurement Project. And Agenda Bill 10811, award of bid to Integrity Excavation and Construction for the South Side Sidewalk Project. What would be council's pleasure? Dave?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull agenda items number 4 and 5 for comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other items?
That, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to accept items 1, 2, and 3. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4, Agenda Bill 10711, award of bid to Haskin Electric for the Washougal Lighting Procurement Project. Mr. Dunn.
I had a question or two for the staff on that, if I might. Jim, would you
like it
are you handling that one tonight?
Yes, sir.
Would you like the item introduced first?
Great idea. Thank you.
Jim?
Yes, on August 12, 2011, a bid opening was held for the Washougal Lighting Procurement Project. 7 bids were opened. Initially, the lowest bidder appeared to be Accurate Electric Unlimited Incorporated. However, upon reviewing all the bid documentation, it was noted that Accurate Electric failed to submit an addendum acknowledgement, which resulted in their bid being declared non-responsive. Staff is therefore recommending that the city award the construction contract to the second lowest bidder, Haskin Electric Incorporated. Recommended actions are award the contract for the Washougal Lighting Procurement Project to Haskin Electric Incorporated and authorize the mayor to sign the contract documents.
What would council's pleasure be?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to accept the bid document from Haskin Electric.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Council discussion. Dave?
Thank you. Jim, where did the funding for this come from?
This is through our Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, which is funded by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act.
This is the one that we initially committed $45,000 to and were later told that we could substitute staff time?
That was part of a contract amendment. That's correct.
Okay. Any of this money coming from reserves?
No.
Thank you very much.
Any other council comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor, just that we are in agreement with Battleground, Vancouver, and Clark County, is that correct?
Battleground,
Or, excuse me, Camas.
Yes, it's actually Battleground in Camas.
Okay.
And the PUD.
Clark Public Utilities is helping us out with this as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
Motion carries. And Agenda Bill 108-11, award of bid for the South Side Sidewalk Project. Jim?
On August 15th, 2011, a bid opening was held for the South Side Sidewalk Project. 4 bids were opened. Staff is recommending that the city award the construction contract to the lowest bidder, Integrity Excavation and Construction. Recommended actions are to award the contract for the South Side Sidewalk Project to Integrity Excavation and Construction and authorize the mayor to sign the contract documents.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to award the contract for South Side Sidewalk Projects to Integrity Excavation and Construction and authorize the mayor to sign the contract documents. Council comments, questions? Dave?
Question for Jim. Jim, what's the source of funding for this one?
This was funded through a budget amendment from reserves.
Thank you. And I noticed it's roughly $185,000. Initially, the figure was $287,000, I believe. What's the difference between the two figures?
The difference between the two figures is the award of $184 and the engineering costs of $61,000. The engineer's estimate was a little bit higher at the time when we went through the amendment process. So that would be the difference.
So
this is actually $250,000 if you add engineering costs as well.
Okay. Thanks very much. I appreciate you clearing that up for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Molly? Sorry.
Just a question for clarification. So I believe that this portion of the East Street project was in the original scope of the big picture, the big East Street picture. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's not my understanding, that it was not in the original scope. It could have been early on that I might not be aware of. I'd have to do some research and look back. But it was deemed that the cost would be too high for access management on that side of the street. And so it wasn't actually in the original project. So that was either in or removed early on, but I would have to do some research to find out.
Because I
For
do
sure.
recall when I was in Olympia talking to the Transportation Improvement Board, or TIB,
Right.
that this section was mentioned.
Right, and that was mentioned early on. I know that TIB had talked to us about it several times, and we deemed that there wasn't enough funding available to complete the cost of the whole section there.
Okay.
And so TIB did not want to fund that portion unless access management was part of it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I believe the three major areas from the very start of the project, the three major areas that I recall being value engineered out for the funding were the South Side sidewalks in that area,
Right, okay.
the roundabout, and then the full rebuild of 32nd Street were all backed out of there. But there certainly was the discussion with both the state and with CDBG on the sidewalks, because it was to be continuous, the original project was continuous sidewalks on
Right.
both sides, so.
Right, okay.
Other questions, comments? Michael?
If I understand correctly, this the south side sidewalks is from Washougal River Road west, is that right?
To 6th, correct?
Right, thank you.
Okay, any other? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to award the contract for the South Side Sidewalk Project to Integrity Excavation and Construction and authorize the mayor to sign the contract documents. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
Motion carries.
Roll call?
Councilor Coaston,
Aye.
Councilor Shoemaker,
No?
Councilor McDaniel,
Aye.
Councilor Delavar,
No.
and Councilor Morris.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, that takes us to public hearing this evening that we have scheduled for Agenda Bill 109-11, an ordinance dealing with medical marijuana moratoriums. There you go.
Bear with me.
Yep. It blinked for a second. There we go. Mr. Knight.
One more time.
Do you need any of these lights off, Nick?
Only if you do, if you feel it would be beneficial.
Can the public see okay? Good.
It'd be nice to have it off, Chris.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor, City Council. The agenda bill before you this evening, Agenda Bill 109-11. We have a public hearing, and just a little brief background, if it pleases the council. Again, federal law relating to medical marijuana. Under the federal law, it's classified as a Schedule I drug with the Controlled Substance Act, and that means the possessing, growing, distributing, or knowingly facilitating the above, even for medical use, is in fact a violation of federal law, regardless of individual state statutes permitting such uses. Under state law, there's a little bit of a history. In 1998, Washington State voters passed Initiative 692, which is codified as State RCW 69.51A. It decriminalized the possession and limited use of medical marijuana for patients who were under physician's care and who suffered from a terminal or debilitating illness. In 2007, the law was expanded. It allowed patients to receive assistance from designated providers, and it broadened the definition of diseases and conditions that medical marijuana could be prescribed for. And then in 2011, the state legislature passed Senate Bill 5073, and this was mostly due to a concern with a lack of safe and sufficient medical marijuana for patients. It put in place a structure to license and regulate the use, distribution, and processing of medical marijuana. And out of concern of this law, that it was in direct conflict with the federal law, Governor Gregoire requested a legal opinion from the U.S. Department of Justice. In his memo to the United States attorneys, James Cole, Deputy Attorney General, stated, "Persons who are in the business of cultivating, selling, or distributing marijuana and those who knowingly facilitate such activities are in violation of the Controlled Substance Act, regardless of state law." Now, in response, the governor stated in her partial veto message under 5073 that absent congressional action, state laws will not protect an individual from legal action by the federal government. She also stated that the United States attorneys have made it clear that state law would not provide these individuals safe harbor from federal prosecution. No state employee should be required to violate federal criminal law in order to fulfill duties under state law. So the issue really became that the governor put it to, or punted, if you will, to the local jurisdictions on this. In response to that, the law would have went into effect on July 22nd, 2011 of this year. This council adopted Ordinance 1706 on July 18th, which basically put in a moratorium against medical marijuana collective gardens. And because you adopted that ordinance, moratorium ordinance, that state law, state RCW, requires that a hearing be held within 60 days of the moratorium ordinance, which is the purpose of our hearing this evening. Staff put together a proposed ordinance that would look at doing a few things. It recognizes the contradiction between federal and state law, and that there may be, and that these contradictions may be addressed in the future legislature. It also extends the emergency moratorium or the moratorium ordinance to 12 months. And it acknowledges that a formal work plan will need to be developed to create local zoning ordinances. And so with that, the hearing for this evening on this proposed ordinance extension is to hold a public hearing to take public testimony. If council desires to make a motion to read the ordinance by title only and to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Okay, thank you. Don, did you have some information that you wanted to add to that?
I don't think so. We had some discussions this afternoon about whether a 6-month moratorium or a year moratorium could be appropriate, and I talked to Mitch about it. He's actually prepared a work plan. That was my concern, if there was a work plan that's been prepared, and I'm okay with a 1 year.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask any members of the public that wish to speak to Agenda Bill 109-11, our medical marijuana moratorium. Please come forward to the microphone, give your name and address, and testimony.
Hi, my name is Gloria Lynn Blake. I'm a resident of Washougal. My mailing address is 506 31st Street. In regards to the medical marijuana, I'm here as a hospice nurse. I take care of terminally ill patients. I'd like to know if any of this is being addressed to caregivers being able to provide for their patients as stated in this statement. Does that include caregivers?
We're all looking at each other.
This is a land use issue.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a land use issue?
Right.
Okay. As far as the land use issue, is this zoning pertaining strictly to inside city limits?
Yes.
Yes.
There's no jurisdiction to do anything.
What is the square mileage of Washougal?
Roughly 6 square miles.
Something like that.
Right.
So if you have about 6 miles in the town of Washougal, you have designated places where you are concerned with zoning, and that pertains to schools, daycares, parks, and religious facilities. Our parks are distributed and our schools are distributed throughout the city, the town. Isn't it going to be there is a current law in place not within 1 mile of a school zone. So how are you going to designate areas within the town as grow areas with just a 6-mile radius?
If I may.
Sure.
The purpose of this ordinance is to extend the moratorium that we have in effect, and basically what it does is it recognizes that there's a lot that needs to be done and between the state and the federal government. And what staff has proposed to City Council is that we really don't spend a lot of our time developing land use ordinances related to that until they get those issues figured out. And then we can, if they come back to us and it's the will of this council that we go forward with developing a zoning ordinance, then that'll be the task at hand, and that may be a difficult task.
Is there a county ordinance in place for the medical marijuana use?
No, the county has put a moratorium in place as well.
Okay. And one final question. How many states does it take to ratify the amendment for the federal government to override the Controlled Substance Act?
2/3, so whatever.
Well,
2/3 or 50? I got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Your and Gloria, your comments are well taken. It certainly, if it gets to the point where it is the council's will to go ahead and rescind the moratorium and to create zoning for it, even though it may be difficult because of some of the constraints put on us, both fortunately and unfortunately for the public, we don't get a punt on things that are difficult. We have to find a way to make it work. So, yeah. Thank you for your testimony. Any other members of the public wishing to testify on the item?
Good evening, Don Bowman, 32934 Southeast 20th Street. And I have just a question. Last week, or I guess when I was here, I pretty much want to obey the federal law. I guess the moratorium helps us for a while. But the one thing I haven't heard from the council or the staff is, what problem are we solving? That's a question.
Sure.
There was a law passed by the legislature this past session that provides for medical marijuana collective gardens and puts some parameters around that. And so that is a new type of situation and context in the state of Washington. It went into effect in mid-July of this year. The law also provided the ability for municipalities to regulate through their zoning regulations medical marijuana collective gardens in terms of their location, use, and operation. So the question that's before all municipalities in Washington is whether or not to step into that and to initiate any regulations at all. But the state law is in effect and provides for collective gardens. A number of municipalities in Washington have enacted moratoria so that some ambiguities can be addressed over the next months or year. And that's what's before the council tonight, is a moratorium to see if the dust will settle on this issue at the state level before we decide whether or not to take action locally.
Well, I probably didn't ask it direct enough, and I don't want to over time. I'm not interested in that. I want to know with the public's point of view, is the public got a problem that we're trying to solve?
I'm not sure that there's a good answer to that, Don. I believe that there is, at least from our standpoint, there is a disparity between the state law and the federal law enough to the point that we wish to take further time before we have to make a decision one way or the other completely on the issue in order to make sure that we take all the safeguards we need to into account.
That's good. I would just hope that we'd have it well documented what problem we're solving for the citizens out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, final call for anyone wishing to address the council on the medical marijuana moratorium. Okay, seeing no further, I will close the hearing and turn the matter to council. Questions, comments, motions? Yes.
I noticed that we've got a 6-month moratorium here, and I apologize if I haven't got the current information because I missed the last meeting.
Your first pages, Dave, should be the original one that was passed, which was 6 months. In back behind there should be the ordinance for the 12-month.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
You bet. I do.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to read the ordinance by title only. Second?
I've got a motion and a second to read the ordinance by title only. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
An ordinance continuing an emergency moratorium for 12 months within the city of Washougal on the establishment, location, operation, licensing, maintenance, or continuation of medical marijuana collective gardens or dispensaries asserted to be authorized or actually authorized under E2 SSB 5073, Chapter 181, Laws of 2011, Chapter 69.51A, Revised Code of Washington, or any other laws of the state of Washington.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Second?
I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual fashion. Any other council discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Michael?
Mr. Mayor, I rise in opposition to the motion. Certainly, we've been briefed by the staff about the obvious conflict between the federal and the state statutes, and I think it's highly doubtful that the state legislature is going to attempt to reconcile state law with federal law. If they were to do so, that would mean that medical marijuana users would be told to take a hike to a different state, because the only way they could really resolve that conflict between federal and state law is if they prohibited it. And just like with alcohol usage during prohibition does not work. It never has, and it never will. the people themselves have declared by their actions and their votes that it's an acceptable use and have voted to allow for medical marijuana usage by those with a physician's recommendation. I believe it's for us to erect barriers for patients that desire natural, cost-effective, and proven pain management is unkind. But the specific points about the agenda bill in front of us, I'd like to point out that since the federal law purports to criminalize all marijuana, regardless of whether it's medical marijuana or street marijuana, we do have a dilemma. Do we as a city ignore the state law and condemn medical marijuana, or do we ignore federal law and encourage medical marijuana? With these two broad options that have been presented to us, I suggest a third different option. I suggest we allow the moratorium to expire with no further action. And there's really no need for us to take further action if we do that. See, currently, medical marijuana is illegal under federal law, and we've been briefed about that. And incidentally, it's somewhat zoned by federal law as well, since the fines and punishments that are levied under federal law double within 1,000 feet of a school zone, park, playground, arcade, etc. So on some level, it's already zoned. So the users of medical marijuana ought to know that they run a significant risk of being prosecuted under federal law, regardless of what the state's law says. And there have been examples of people who have thought that they had the sanctioning of their state who have been prosecuted by the feds anyway. If we as a city begin to create a system of regulation and zoning, even special taxation of medical marijuana, then we are providing a de facto positive defense for it, and this is part of the discussion, part of the dilemma that we have here. Because and I want to be very clear about this, Governor Gregoire vetoed portions of the most recent bill because she was worried about providing medical marijuana users with a so-called positive defense. The intent behind the partial veto was that the state does not wish to be sued by the feds, in essence, because of providing a legal defense to medical marijuana users. But if we as a city take no action, then we are not violating federal law. We would also not be violating the intent behind the state law. I understand the moratorium is legal, so we're not violating the state law if we pass the moratorium. But the intent under the initiative 692, I believe it was, that was passed by the voters, and the intent of the legislation that's been passed and went into effect recently allows for medical marijuana usage without interference by the cities. As a result, since it's already zoned, if any person wishes to grow medical marijuana for a collective garden, if we did nothing, if they did that within 1,000 feet of a school or a park or an arcade, they would be doubly at risk of being prosecuted under federal law. The city, and of course, the city always reserves the right to prosecute medical marijuana users under federal law. As I understand it, right now, in theory, we could, although it's not worth our time to do so. But we've found it not worth our time for small amounts in the respectful users. If we refrain from regulating and promoting medical marijuana, if we refrain from prohibiting medical marijuana in our city, we'd be sending, I believe, the right message, which is let the individual assess the risks associated with his own activity. And if we let the individual live at peace with his neighbors and stay out of their business, I think we're going to do a good thing. But specifically, when we talk about federal and state law, there's one point I wanted to mention very briefly about our duty under the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 gives the specific authority that Congress has. There are many people who argue, and I think very successfully, that Congress does not have the legitimate power under Article 1, Section 8 to prohibit, as it does with the Controlled Substances Act, the use and growing of medical marijuana, or even just straight marijuana, although tonight hopefully we're talking about just medical marijuana. Instead, they would have the legitimate authority, I believe, sorry about that, to restrict the importation of it, and that's part of the Controlled Substances Act. So that part's legitimate. But as far as prohibiting our state to determine its own course, I think there's a strong argument to say that it does not allow that. And then finally, if we take a look at the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, it states, and it's very simple, very short, The powers not delegated, in other words, not specifically given to the Congress by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. And if we apply that, my understanding is that, and this is why state legislatures can legitimately set up these rules, which are on the surface very much in conflict with the federal rules. It's because we do have the legitimate right as a state to assert under the 10th Amendment, no, you don't have the authority, we'll set up our own rules. And if our citizens are willing to follow that, that's at their own risk. Having said all of that, I'll be voting against this ordinance and hope that other council members will join me.
Two items, if you would, please. We on either side. 2 points. One, Don, I believe Article 8 has it not been taken up by the federal courts already and been upheld to be constitutional? The federal government has.
I'm guessing that it probably has, yes.
And the second,
Michael, I have to defer to you on constitutional issues, but I think
second,
that's probably right.
I want to make sure that certainly the public and most certainly the City Council understands the City of Washougal Police Department and our City Attorney does not fail to go after medical marijuana users within the City of Washougal because we don't deem it worth our time. We have been given a safeguard by the state in not needing to prosecute those and go through that because of the state law that is in place that safeguards our law enforcement officers and our city attorneys from being prosecuted under the federal laws. And we do it under the understanding of that, not because we don't feel that it's worth our time. If there is a law on the books in this city, in this state, our law enforcement officers will enforce that law, period.
I appreciate the correction.
Other comments, questions from council? Dave?
What are the consequences of not passing this ordinance tonight? What disadvantageous position does that put us in?
Well, one, it would be that if you were able to find a place that you were going to do these collective gardens outside the 1,000 feet from a church or school or park, then you could be anywhere within the city. Then that you'd be next to neighbors who would have to deal with that issue, and any of the things that would come from that. We don't know all the aspects, and that's part of the thing. Is part of us having a work plan and going and taking this out to the public and developing an ordinance if council sees fit, and that would address those concerns and take into the concerns of the neighbors. And so you could have traffic, you could have smells, and I don't even know all the issues that you could have. We haven't vetted that yet.
So extending the moratorium gives us time to look at these issues on both sides and come up with a reasonable plan for handling it.
The ordinance in effect, the ordinance that is before you, yeah, it takes a somewhat of a approach that we're going to watch what the legislature does. We're going to see how they try to address it. We can look at other municipalities, see how they address it, but it also gives us the time to formulate a plan and take that out to for public comment, go before a planning commission, get a recommendation from them to bring to you.
If you were charged with putting together this ordinance at this time, without the state and the feds having resolved their differences on the issue, do you think you could come up with an effective ordinance?
I'd like to think I could, but whether or not it addresses all the concerns of the individuals, the public, the citizens of Washougal, I don't know, and I can't answer that. Because I haven't heard from them.
And this gives us the time to figure that out.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question, yes. I'm really concerned about culpability as far as the city is concerned. I mean, if we ever enact an ordinance or issue a permit for something like this, wouldn't we indeed be culpable at the federal level because we're actually okaying this particular activity?
The expressed opinion of the U.S. Attorney in response to Governor Gregoire's query on that same question was that there is not a safe harbor in our own state law for that type of activity by the state legislature or city councils or county commissions. And so the answer would, I guess, be yes. There's potential culpability there. The act definitely points to facilitating that that activity as being a violation of the act. And the U.S. Attorney, I believe, was pretty forthright in saying that there wasn't a safe harbor. Now, that doesn't mean that there would be proactive enforcement and prosecution by the federal government of a Washougal ordinance and the elected officials and appointed officers of the city of Washougal. I think that would be a question for the U.S. Attorney and the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Department of Justice. There's many communities throughout the country that are dealing with this all across the spectrum, and they have limited resources. But, and heretofore, those limited resources have kind of precluded, in Washington anyway, federal activity in terms of enforcement. But there's no guarantee that if we did something here that we wouldn't have an issue.
Thank you.
Dave?
So, if I understand correctly, this moratorium gives us safe harbor from federal interference in local affairs while the state and the feds sort this out and while we find out enough information to come up with a decent, workable ordinance.
A moratorium indicates that we are not facilitating and would not be in violation of the Controlled Substance Act. And then, yes, it gives us time to address the issue.
Okay.
No moratorium, in fairness to Councilor Delavar's perspective, not having a moratorium is also a safe harbor federally because you would not be facilitating. It would be people acting of their own accord, and we would not be blessing it or granting approval for it. But it doesn't buy us time to deal with the potential impacts to the community, and that's also why we need the moratorium, in our opinion.
Would we not be guilty of tolerating it, which is another way of getting at us for noncompliance?
I'm not aware that notion has been on the table or been pursued in terms of any culpability for a community. But this is a brand new issue.
Mr. Holder showed himself to be very inventive, so I don't want to put ourselves in that position. Thank you.
We already have laws on the books that protect neighbors against nuisance laws, basically, against odor and also against running a business without a license out of a residence, right?
We have that, yes.
Okay. So as far as odor is concerned, there's already a law on the books about that.
Well, and I would have to defer to the police chief because that's under Title IX, and I'm not that familiar with that.
From my reading of it, having just looked it up recently, I believe it is in there. And
you have nuisance provisions.
Yeah, nuisance provisions. And so regardless of whether they're using medical marijuana or something else that's obnoxious, in theory, citizens have recourse there. One thing that I'm always cautious about when it comes to politics is when people tell you what something does versus, and as far as intent is concerned. One thing I would caution us is that as far as this moratorium is concerned, certainly it does, in theory, buy time. You could also say that it punts it down the road because it's just, I doubt that, from what I can gather, I doubt we're really going to be dealing with this. If we have the 12 months, we're going to have 12 months, and then hopefully the legislature is going to pick it up again and see if they can make more sense out of their code that was partially vetoed. So to me, I don't see this as really buying time so much as just kicking the can down the road. But anyway, I made my point.
Okay. Dave?
I always listen when Michael Delavar raises constitutional issues because he does such a great job of it. And I'm very, very sympathetic to these issues because they touch on an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, that of local control. and interference in our affairs. In this case, think that the culpability issue that you brought up is what sways me. That and the fact that I'm still waiting for a court majority to develop, which will be sympathetic to the issues of constitutionality. I haven't seen it yet. So with all of those factors in mind, I'm inclined to vote for the moratorium simply because it gets us off the hook.
Any other items from council? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual fashion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. And let the record show that Councilman Russell has joined the meeting. Okay, Agenda Bill 110-11, ordinance to Washougal Municipal Code, ordinance change to Washougal Municipal Code 2.44.140, scatter gardens. Mr. Knight, or Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Cemetery Board is submitting changes to Ordinance 2.44.140 Scatter Garden. The Board is recommending changing the ordinance title to Cremain Memorial Garden to further prevent customer confusion over the terminology. The Board is also recommending the inclusion of biodegradable cremain urns to the definitions. These cremain urns will permit use of the area for those potential customers reticent to pour remains straight onto the ground. These non-toxic cremain urns will degrade within 12 months, which is in keeping with the intentional use of the area. Recommended actions are to read the ordinance by title only, pass, post, and publish in the usual manner.
So moved. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, make a motion to read the ordinance by title only.
Thank you.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to read the ordinance by title only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
An ordinance amending the title to WMC 2.44.140 to Cremain Memorial Garden, adding a section containing a definition for biodegradable cremain urns, and amending Washougal Municipal Code 2.44.140 2B related to cremated remains buried in scatter garden.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to pass, post, and publish in the usual manner.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual fashion. Any council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have Agenda Bill 111-11. Amendments to Washougal Municipal Code 2.04.020, salary commissions. Mrs. Cefalo.
It's been past practice to take the salary commission's findings and put the new salary numbers under Washougal Municipal Code 20.04.0201. But such a procedure is inappropriate and in conflict, since the only city officials who have the authority to make or amend ordinances is the city council. Given the role of the salary commission, it is no longer necessary or appropriate to have an ordinance to establish salaries for elected officials. Additionally, given that elected officials are reimbursed expenses according to the personnel policies as adopted by council, it is no longer necessary to include the verbiage as outlined in 2.04.0202. The recommended action is to read the ordinance by title only, repealing the code 2.04.020, sections 1 and 2, and pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Mr. Mayor, I request unanimous consent to read the ordinance by title only, repealing WMC 2.04.020, sections 1 and 2.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
We did make a slight change on this on the heading where we put the whereas down in the first whereas part, and then we changed the word respected to respective. Not that you aren't all respected. With that, I'll read the ordinance by title only. An ordinance repealing Washougal Municipal Code 2.04.0201 and 2.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual manner. Any council discussion?
Mr. Mayor. I was asked earlier this afternoon about this this code change, and I wanted to point out something that I discovered in RCW, and that is that the city has the authority, the ability to create, under state law, the city has the authority to establish a salary commission, but is not required to. However, we have, and it makes complete sense, and I'm glad that we can repeal this legislation, which is no longer useful and somewhat contradictory. So, thank you.
Any other council comments? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass, post, and publish the ordinance in the usual fashion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have Agenda Bill 112-11, a resolution recognizing first responders. I'm going to make your job a little bit easier this evening and the meeting a little bit longer, though, by dispensing with any motions to read the resolution by title only and read the entire resolution into the record. This is a resolution recognizing and acknowledging the importance of first responder emergency personnel to the quality of life in the city of Washougal. Whereas the city of Washougal's first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and volunteers in those programs are charged with heavy responsibility for public health, safety, and the welfare of the citizens of the city of Washougal. And whereas the city of Washougal's first responders work daily to protect our citizens from potential harm and treat those who have been injured or suffered health emergencies, all of which entails significant personal risk. And whereas the city of Washougal's first responders maintain high standards of qualifications and performance through frequent and intensive training. And whereas as we approach the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we are mindful of the many sacrifices the first responders make in the protection of fellow citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council for the City of Washougal, Washington as follows: that the City Council hereby recognizes and commends the service of our first responders, not only as that of faithful employees and volunteers, but also the exemplary conduct to be admired and emulated by the citizens of the City of Washougal. And with the approaching 10-year anniversary of the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center and other affected targets, the Council recognizes this as an appropriate time to recognize the work of first responders and the sacrifices they and their families are called upon to make to safeguard their fellow citizens. With that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. Council discussion. Rod?
Yeah, as a member of the fire department, I very much appreciate this. All of our firemen and firefighters and police officers, all of us are working very hard every day and run into situations that are unpleasant. And as a quote that I had from some people that I used to work with, I'm glad you guys can do it because I couldn't go out and do that. So that's kind of the pat on the back that I feel comfortable with, and that we go out and do those things every day. Just as a piece of record, even though every day there's a firefighter or paramedic or police officer killed somewhere in the United States, we've actually only lost one volunteer firefighter and have never lost a paid firefighter in the city of Washougal. And it was probably 25 years ago, and the gentleman was directing traffic and had a heart attack. So we have one line of duty death as far as the fire department, but it's appreciated, and thanks everybody for the pat on the back.
Well said. Molly?
Yes, honestly, I don't think we can thank these men and women enough. Just recently at a Sunday church service that Jennifer and I were both attending, there was a woman who had a medical emergency, and the ambulance was there in less than 5 minutes. Their staff was very professional and gave her a lot of dignity during what must have been kind of embarrassing situation for her. And they did transport her to the hospital, but I do really, truly appreciate, and I think everybody appreciated how professional they were, both medically and just with their decorum in general. So, can't thank them often enough.
Point.
I agree.
Any other council discussion? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to pass and post the resolution in the usual manner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. With that, we are at a second opportunity for the public to address council. If there's anyone from the public wishing to address the council this evening, please step forward to the microphone. Okay. Under Mayor's Report, I have three items for you this evening. The first is a Planning Commission recommendation. We had an interview panel which interviewed 4 different applicants for the Open Planning Commission seat, and the name that has come forward to us as a recommendation to add to that commission is Mr. Andreas Johnson. And I would ask for your confirmation of that appointment.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to accept Andreas Johnson to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Johnson to the Planning Commission. Any council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I also have a pair of proclamations for this evening. First one, a proclamation for Constitution Week. Whereas September 17th, 2011 marks the 224th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document in its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Sean Gard, by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Washougal, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th to the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. The second proclamation I have kind of piggybacks on the resolution that we did for the first responders. I believe Councilman Shoemaker last year, when you originally brought the item forward, it was to designate September 11th as First Responders Day. And so we have a proclamation for that as well. A proclamation of the City of Washougal declaring September 11th, 2011 as First Responders Day in the City of Washougal. Whereas the City of Washougal's first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and volunteers are charged with heavy responsibility for public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the City of Washougal. And whereas the City of Washougal's first responders work daily to protect our citizens from potential harm and treat those who have been injured or suffered health emergencies, all of which entail significant personal risk. And whereas the City of Washougal's first responders maintain high standards of qualifications and performance through frequent and intensive training. And whereas as we approach the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we are mindful of the many sacrifices the first responders make in protection of our fellow citizens. Now, therefore, it is proclaimed by the City of Washougal that September 11th, 2011 be declared as First Responders Day in the City of Washougal. For your schedules this week, if you are available, I would also like to make notice the Camas Fire Department on Sunday morning, 9/11 at 8 a.m. Between, I believe, their City Hall and the library is having their annual 9/11 memorial observance. I attended that last year. It is extremely well done. It is very tastefully done and very somber. But for any members of the public or the council, if you are available to attend that 8 in the morning on Sunday morning. And then also, I know I believe I noticed on some community calendars, we have a number of other organizations that are doing, and some of the churches that are doing programs throughout the week and lunches, breakfasts, that type of thing. One that I know of for sure, St. Thomas Church, Saturday morning, the day before 9/11, at 9 a.m. is doing a Blue Mass for our firefighters, police officers, volunteers, and paramedics. But certainly, Don, do you know if there's a listing in the paper this week of the other? Okay.
There's about 8 things going on.
There's a lot. So if you would, please check your schedules, and if you're available for any of those that are honoring the first responder folks that we have, it would be great if you could be in attendance. That's the end of my report. Council, any items from council? Molly?
Just one thing. We know that Highway 14 construction has impacted a number of the businesses that front along that stretch of construction road. And I think one thing that we can all do as council members and even citizens is to actually reach into our social networks and our personal face-to-face networks to really try to ensure that people patronize all those businesses, because I think all of them are hurting. And I did talk to Don Wagner this afternoon, and he said, that this is going to be kind of a prolonged effort, because once they get the that south side frontage road paved, then they're going to be rerouting traffic, all the Highway 14 traffic, to that south side frontage road, and that will continue to negatively impact a lot of those small business owners. So I think we have a real opportunity here to kind of get the word out to assist them so that they'll be able to prosper and stay in business throughout this prolonged construction project. So that's something that I think we can all work together on.
I know Dave and I had a lunch last week with one of the property owners affected in that area, and I believe he had made the statement that the State Department of Transportation was allowing some flexibility in some signage up on the berms and erecting some and not removing it. So hopefully we'll be able to help facilitate some of that. We might be sure, now that I think of it, we might be sure to, Mitch, if you would pass that word along to Sherry and to Chief Mitchell so that somebody isn't left out of the loop. And
I don't think they touch it in state right away. If it's not on the river, it's in state right away.
Okay. Other items from council?
Glad to hear, and I completely agree with Councilmember Costin as far as patronizing and otherwise supporting businesses, particularly around the construction, because it is difficult. I remember when we were working on downtown with Schuylkill, particularly True Value and some of the other businesses were having a really hard time. And I was talking with one of the owners just the other day, and they are still recovering from, that was activities, almost 3 years ago. So it will take some time, and I am very glad to hear a mention of that, and I do hope we can help with signage or anything else that the city can do to help these business owners. I also wanted to make a comment. I think it was this past spring, Administrator Scott, we were talking about going over fees. I believe it was fees, permitting fees or other fees that we have. There's quite a long list of fees, city fees and charges from our municipal code, specifically Chapter 3.88 that I pulled up, that I want us to take a look at, because with the new Economic Development Association, I want to make sure that we're competitive with our neighbors, specifically on permitting fees and such. So I don't know if we've taken a look at that or if we've done any sort of comparison with Camas or any other cities. I just want to make sure that we're not high on some of these things, and that we make sure that we're competitive.
We haven't undertaken the thorough process that we were alluding to previously. It's still on our work plan to do.
I see.
David.
I'd like to publicly thank council members McDaniel and Costin for their efforts to get Representative Ann Rivers from Olympia on board with us to do something about the dirt that's piled up along east of 2nd Street, along Highway 14, which is blocking the view to those businesses in that shopping center there. At least one of them has indicated that they might be going out of business the next 30 days if we can't solve that problem. So, Molly, Jennifer, thank you.
Rod?
Yeah, I very much appreciate the resolution recognizing first responders, but it goes without saying that this city is a great place to live, and it's due in part to all of the staff that we have in the city. We have a couple of guys in the back there from the Public Works Department, from the sewer treatment plant, and without those guys taking care of their business, we'd all have a problem here. So I just want to make sure that we recognize that it is part of the community that with the first responders and all, but it is very much makes this community a great place to live by having all of the staff that we have, and we actually run quite lean on staff power, and so I just want to make sure that everybody recognizes the job that everybody else does.
Other items? Dave? And as you start this, I'm going to exit the room very quickly because Councilman Morris just reminded me that we do have some staff here for a specific reason this evening, and I blanked it for a moment. Go ahead, Dave.
Way to go, Rod. I wanted to join Councilman Morris in something, and I'll tell you a funny story about Trevor Evers. I once said to him, I thought public safety was the first concern of the council. And he said, you might think that until your toilet doesn't flush. So we do have a terrific staff in this city. It's been whittled down by the recession and by the financial problems that we've had. And we've somehow managed to keep the best of the best. And I don't think there's a way that we could possibly recognize all these people that get us through every day in the city, but there are a lot of them. Sometimes not enough of them.
Back to you, Sean.
Pardon?
It's back to you.
My sincerest apology. I've had these on my desk. We've been trying to get staff here for one of our meetings and get it coordinated, and I've been trying to get these off my desk, trying to get them off my desk. We finally got it kind of sort of arranged. They're still sitting in the middle of my desk, and I forgot to grab them this evening. Ryan, would you come forward, please? Come on up.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Trevor Munch is also a maintenance 3 at the publicly operated treatment works, so we appreciate him being here as well.
I want to make sure and pass this along to the folks who are actually doing the work. We alluded to this earlier this year from the Department of Ecology to the City of Washougal. Why they make these address these to the Mayor of Washougal, I don't know, because I'm not down there operating that thing. This is in regards to the outstanding wastewater treatment plan award for the City of Washougal wastewater treatment plant. Dear Mayor Gard, the Department of Ecology Southwest Regional Office is honored to extend our congratulations and appreciation to the City of Washougal wastewater treatment plant for its excellent performance throughout 2010. We recognize the effort and attention to detail that is required to consistently and reliably treat wastewater to a high level of quality. Plant operators must conduct thousands of process monitoring tests throughout the year to keep the process on track and operating at peak performance. Complying with all of the conditions of the wastewater discharge permit, as well as not exceeding any effluent limitations, requires the dedication of operators, maintenance staff, engineering staff, administrative support, and management. We are grateful for your dedication to protect the waters of the Pacific Northwest, a great natural and recreational resource. Please present the enclosed plaque to the operating staff of the treatment plant. We look forward to your continued excellence in the coming years. Thank you. Congratulations, Robert Berquist, AP, Southwest Region Manager of Water Quality Program for the Department of Ecology. Thank you very much. Thank you. And for those who don't know, welcome back, Brian. Mr. Baker, unfortunately, has it almost been 2 months now?
It's getting close.
Pretty close. The unfortunate fatality accident that we had out on Lady Island. Ryan and his daughter were the second vehicle behind and were involved in the accident as well. And Ryan's been out on some medical leave for a concussion that he tells me no longer rattles in his head or goes for his. We weren't too worried about your wrist. He's upstairs. Mrs. Sefler, would you come forward, please? I also have from the Association of Washington Cities a Well City Award that was conferred on the City of Washington. We have a committee of staff members and council who make up our wellness committee, including Jeanette, Kelly Regan, Sarah and Jesse Kashowitz, Councilman Greenlee, and Ariana Baldwin at the Fire Department. Dear Mayor Guard, this is from AWC. Dear Mayor Guard, I would like to extend my congratulations to you and your staff. Again, why they include me in this, I have no idea, because anyway. Enough said for earning the 2011 Well City Award at the Excellence level. The Excellence level indicates you have met the highest level of Well City standards, demonstrating your wellness program follows best practices in the workplace for health promotion and have earned the award in 3 or more consecutive years. In close, you'll find your Well City Award certificates for the committee members. The City of Washington is among only 82 Washington cities and quasi-municipal entities that have received the Well City recognition this year by the AWC Employee Benefit Trust. Trust members that earn this distinction will receive a 2% discount on the Regent's Blue Shield medical premiums for employees and spouses in 2012. The AWC Benefit Trust Board of Trustees believes that the employer plays a vital role in building a workplace that supports healthy endeavors, with the exception of some mayors. Earning the Well City Award takes a commitment to your elected officials, management, and staff. The requirements are comprehensive and reflect a broad-based strategy to support employee health, increase productivity, and control health costs. Thank you for your commitment to employee health. AWC is proud of the leadership you have shown among cities and towns in Washington and across the nation. Your wellness program is a model for others to emulate. Sincerely, Mike Riccardi, Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Washington Cities. Jeanette, on behalf of everyone who couldn't be here this evening, the actual award. Jeanette, not to put you on the spot, but do you recall what the 2% reduction in our health premiums is worth because of that?
I want to say $14,000 in savings. Yeah.
And healthier employees, with the exception of the mayor. Are there any other items from council?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.